Alrighty, so today we're going to do the LA team in the season preview, and we start off with the LA Galaxy, and there's no doubt that a lot of Galaxy fans has to be very frustrated with the way that they saw their intercity rival LAFC getting an MLS Cup. Although I will say that it's not as painful as what we saw last year, where NYCFC, of course, got their first MLS Cup, and Red Bulls fan not only had to suffer through that, but the fact that they have never won an MLS Cup and they just saw their intercity rival able to do that in just 5 years, yeah, that has to hurt. But at least for Galaxy fans, they will always bold the fact that, well, yeah, LAFC, of course, won MLS Cup. We have 5 of them, and we still have the most out of any team in MLS, and we'll definitely hold on to that bragging right, unless if LAFC eventually catch up and win 5 MLS Cup and maybe kind of have a dynasty run in these next couple of years. But there's no doubt that they're looking to trying to not only get back to the playoffs, but also just make a deep playoff run. Because, you know, for the Galaxy, I know it's been a turbulent last couple of years for them, and really they have not been the same team that we've seen ever since Bruce Arena left this team, and that this team has kind of gone through a bit of a decline. But when you look at the roster that they have, this is a decent roster that could maybe make a run for it, not only for a playoff position, but also potentially go deep into the playoffs. Now, last season, they finished with 14-8-12 record and finished with 50 points. And the last 5 seasons, you know, in last season, it was by far the highest that they finished in the last 5 seasons. In fact, I think that's the highest they've finished in quite a while now. Probably since 2014, since they won MLS Cup, because I don't remember where they finished anywhere higher than the top 4 of the Western Conference for a while now. But they finished in 4th place with 14-8-12 record and finished with 50 points. But unfortunately, they did lose to the eventual MLS Cup champion LAFC, and also really the second time in less than 5 years that they lost to their intercity rival in the playoffs. In 2021, they finished 8th place with a 13-9-12 record and finished with 48 points. But they did not make it to the playoffs because they realized that, yeah, you know, getting a draw against Minnesota was not going to be enough for them to move on to the playoffs, especially after what happened with RSL getting that late winner and basically knocked the Galaxy out of the playoffs. And that has to be one of the most painful seasons for Galaxy fans to endure. I mean, Galaxy fans have endured some painful season, but that is definitely one of the more painful ones with the way that they were in the playoffs pretty much, or they were in a playoff position pretty much every single week up until decision day, where they were knocked out of it and miss out on the playoffs. But in 2020, in the COVID-shortened year, yeah, it was not a great year for the Galaxy, finishing 10th place with 6-4-12 record and finished with 22 points, and also did not make it to the playoffs. In 2019, it got better. They finished 5th place with a 16-3-15 record. Keep in mind, this was the second year where Zlatan was with this team, and they finished with 51 points. But just like what happened last season, they also lost to LAFC in the second round. And then in 2018, which is the year that Zlatan was on this team, yeah, they did not make it to the playoffs. And in some way, you know, they once again suffer decision day heartbreak, where, you know, they didn't really need much to make it to the playoffs. I think all they need to do is get a draw or get a win to make it to the playoffs. They lost to the Houston Dynamo on that final day, and didn't just lose to the Houston Dynamo, but lost to them by a score of 4-2. And that this is where I begin to talk about how the Dynamo seems to be a team that, you know, Galaxy fans just simply hate playing them, because knowing how they just always have their number, and also especially on decision day, yeah, you know, that was kind of one of the worst matchup that the Galaxy would have had. But they finished with 13-9-12 record, and also finished at the exact same points that they had that heartbreaking loss, and the exact same record as the heartbreaking loss that they had, or the decision day kind of heartbreaking result that they had in 2021, because I remember in 2021 they didn't lose, but they draw that game, and it was not enough for them to make it to the playoffs, and the same goes in 2018. So a lot of coincidence in terms of how they suffer a heartbreaking decision day moment between the 2021 season and also the 2018 season. Now, in terms of some of the transfer that they had, they haven't really made a lot of signings this offseason. I mean, the only notables signings is getting Memo Rodriguez off of free agency from the Houston Dynamo, and the same goes for Chris Mavinga, who they bought off of free agency after he left with TFC. They also got Genie V from the draft pick. But in terms of some of the players that is no longer with this team, oh, there's definitely some notable name. And one of the most notable name that I think Galaxy fans can definitely breathe a sigh of relief that he's no longer on this team is Kevin Cabral. I mean, he is definitely going to go down as one of the worst contract we've seen a team has to endure. And unfortunately for the Galaxy, they still have to eat up half of his salary. But at least the good thing is they did finally move on from him. And that that was something that it didn't look like that was going to be the case after he signed that DP deal. They also move on from Derek Williams, who I believe, oh god, I forgot where he actually went. I know Cameron Dunbar, he went to Minnesota United. Nick DePuy, he went to Nashville SC. And then they also decided to move on from Samuel Grandsir, which this is kind of an interesting one because, while I don't think Samuel Grandsir was something that I would say was excellent for the Galaxy on the wing play, there's times that he was decent. I mean, I remember when they decided to sign Samuel Grandsir, I thought that was going to be another coming of Roman Alessandrini that they had a couple of years ago, but yeah, that didn't quite turn out, and now they're moving on from him. They also move on from Richard Sanchez, who I'm surprised they actually had him on the roster because I thought he was moved on a long time ago. They also move on to Victor Vasquez, who's going to be going back to TFC for his reunion tour. Unfortunately, that's not the case for Eric Zavaleta, who they move on and still don't have a club. They also move on from Jorge Villafania, which I actually misspelled his name there. Got the E there, but yeah, they move on from Jorge Villafania, and then Sasha Kleshin, of course, retired this off season to join part of the broadcast team for Apple TV. Now, in terms of the strength of this team, it's definitely the midfield and the striker. I mean, when you look at this midfield, it is actually really stacked. Like, there's some really decent pieces. We talked about Ricky Puig being potentially the playmaker that the Galaxy have been looking for a long time, and he kind of showing you why that he came out of the La Masia Academy, and a guy that I won't be surprised he might be sold to another team in Europe, because that's kind of the thing with Ricky Puig. He didn't come to the Galaxy and didn't come to MLS just to have fun. He's there to try to get a second chance of maybe going back to Europe and be signed with a well-known team, and maybe even Barcelona is looking to try to get him back. And then you got a surprising package in Gaston Bergman, who I don't think a lot of people give him enough credit that this was a very decent signing for the Galaxy. Like, he really kind of came out of nowhere to be a decent anchor in that midfield for the Galaxy, and unfortunately in a not so good way. I remember him scoring that absolute golazo in the Cali Classico, and again, the reason why I say it's not in a good way is because I'm a Quakes fan, and yeah, that kind of hurt when he, of course, scored that golazo a little bit, because the Quakes were kind of out of it. But also you got Marky Delgado on the other side, and Delgado really proven himself why he's an underrated midfielder, especially during his time with TFC. I mean, maybe I think Toronto might be regretting a little bit, decided to move on from Marky Delgado though. But yeah, the midfield is definitely stacked, and the same goes in terms of the number 9 position. I mean, Chicharito is still there. He's going to still banging those goals. And Dejan Joveljic, a guy that, again, a lot of Galaxy fans have demanded him to get more minutes because of what he has done last season. Again, I think for Joveljic, this is the difficult situation that Greg Vanney's going to have to do, because you have a guy coming off the bench, seems to score every single game, like what we saw Joveljic did last season. So, yeah, I mean, I can understand why fans are frustrated that Joveljic are not getting enough minutes and always have to come off the bench, and I think maybe Joveljic himself may be a little frustrated with that too. But I still think that maybe he's just kind of one of those players that maybe fries when you come off the bench. I mean, you always want to have a player that can come off the bench and play that El Zenio role and score those big goals as a super sub, and that is exactly what Dejan Joveljic has brought to the table time and time again last season. I mean, if I would have said who is the best super sub in the league last season, I think is no question. It has to be Dejan Joveljic last year. But in terms of the weakness of this team, yeah, I hate to say that I want to talk about the defense being one of the weakness, but it kind of still is. I mean, it definitely had gone better last season, especially I think it got a lot better because of the fact that Caceres was in there, and I think Caceres might be one of the best signings that the Galaxy has at the back in a very long time, because my God, this team has tried everything to fix their back line, and it's mind-boggling the fact that they haven't been able to do so. But it seems like there might be a little bit of a light at the tunnel last season, especially the second half of the season, where the back line actually for once look decent and don't look like the garbage back line that we've seen this team had time and time again for the last couple of years. But also in the wing area, again, this kind of perfectly transition in terms of my free big question of the fact that who's going to play left wing in this team, because Samuel Grandsir was the regular starter for this team, and now he is gone. I mean, are they going to maybe replace him? Because so far they haven't had a replacement for him. Now, I have heard rumors that, maybe they can bring back Christian Pavone in this team, and I think that would have been a perfect fit, because we saw what Christian Pavone can bring to the table when he was with the Galaxy, and it was always kind of weird that they decided to just move on from him, and especially now that, believe it or not, the Galaxy actually have a DP spot. I mean, that seems like a miracle of it itself, because of this team always seems to be stuck with all of their DP being uses. And even speaking of Christian Pavone, they had to go for a little bit of a loophole in terms of even signing him on a TAM deal when they loaned him for Boca Junior. But yeah, I mean, there is that question of that left wing position. I mean, one player that I also know that they've been heavily linked is Isco from I think oh god, I forgot where Isco play. I don't think he's with Real Madrid anymore. I think he's currently playing for Sevilla right now, but he's not a left winger. He's more of a number 10. So again, it's going to be a big question in terms of that spot. And I would also say that there's definitely a question about that right wing position too, because as much as it's probably going to be Douglas Costa as the regular starter for the right wing, I mean, Costa was not good whatsoever last season. I mean, he's been scoring some amazing goals, but yeah, there's times where it was kind of what we expected, where he was kind of lazy at time, and then there's also some injury issue that he had to dealt with last season too. So yeah, that's going to be something that I think the Galaxy will absolutely have to address before the season begins. And then the other big question really is just something that we've just saw a couple of days ago, and I've been talking about it in the News of the Week episode, is what is going on with the Julian Araujo situation and what actually is going to happen. Now, I did say in the last News of the Week episode that it doesn't seem like that deal is going to happen, because it seems like both the Galaxy and Barcelona just could not agree on this deal, as they missed that deadline to get that deal over by 18 that is the Spanish transfer window. But now I have heard reports from Tom Bogert saying that it seems like this deal maybe is not their hope, the fact that Araujo could potentially go to Barcelona is not completely dead, and that it seems like it's just kind of in a limbo situation. And that's despite the fact that I've heard report saying that FIFA has rejected the appeal from both Barcelona and the Galaxy in terms of this move being done. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this situation is going to end. And it's also going to be interesting that if this situation is going to end, I mean, if Araujo is going to stay with the Galaxy, again, I bring up the Lucho Acosta situation yesterday in my News of the Week episode. Is that going to affect the same case with Julian Araujo, with the way that he was so close in terms of getting a dream move to such a big team like Barcelona, and now he's stuck with the Galaxy at least for another season? What exactly is his mentality, and just that willingness to continue to improve so bigger club can come calling will be? Because again, it's absolutely heartbreaking if you are a young player and you're on the verge of not only making that move to Europe, but to join Barcelona. I mean, I know he probably won't get minutes for Barcelona, and that there's been talks that he's actually just going to play for the B team, but it is still Barcelona. I mean, it's one of the most well-known, if not the most well-known club that anybody would wants to play for them. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this situation is going to be, and I'm going to assume most likely Araujo is going to come back to the Galaxy. And again, it's going to be interesting to see, will he has that mental toughness to realize that, hey, it's heartbreaking that that he was just seconds away from joining Barcelona, but now he's stuck with the team. Can he have that drive and hunger that maybe in the future some other big team that is going to come knocking on the door in terms of signing him from Europe? And then final big question for this team is, can they finally have a season where we're not asking question about their back line? Again, you know, I talked about how Caceres last year definitely brought some good leadership in that back line, but you know, there is still other question about the other center backs too. You know, with Koulibaly, there's question about the fact that he's been kind of inconsistent last season. Now they did add some depth by bringing Chris Mavinga, but again, you know, this is not the Chris Mavinga that we saw back in 2016 or 2017 with TFC, where he was a rock in the defense. This is a Chris Mavinga that has been going through injury issue, and I feel like injuries have really wrecked his career to a point where he just looked like a shell of his old self a couple of years ago. So yeah, not only the fact that there's question in their defense, but in terms of the depth that they brought in, it's not going to help the case too. But you know, again, we'll see whether or not if that back line can be stabilized, just like what we saw in the second half of the season. But now the bonus question for this Galaxy team is the fact that will Chris Klein remain in charge, despite the fact that there is a lot of pressure on him, knowing the supporter group are protesting, demanding him to leave. I mean, we saw it last night when they had a preseason game where literally there was no supporter group for the Galaxy. Like, there was no one attending that, and we'll see whether or not if that kind of will continue as we head to the regular season. There's even some protests outside the stadium too. Yeah, there is definitely a lot of backlash that Chris Klein has been receiving, especially you know, that whole situation where they breached the DPP rule. That was kind of the last straw for this fan base. They've fed up with Chris Klein for many years, and that situation that they had, you know, it's gotten to a point where every single Galaxy fans are demanding him to leave. But again, you know, we'll see whether or not if Klein will remain, and especially I think he also signed a new contract this season. Again, it will be interesting to see whether if he remains. I mean, again, I think winning, of course, would solve some of these issues. You know, if this team is gonna win, I think many people might start to look away from this issue too. But if they are start going to lose again, and that again, the Galaxy have not made the playoffs consecutively in a long time. It seems like just as you thought that they would. We got that breakthrough like what we saw in 2019. The very next year, they did not make it to a playoff. So, yeah, again, if things are going to be a disaster for this team, and it shouldn't be, because on paper, this team should be a playoff team, yeah, the pressure is going to grow on Chris Klein even more, and it's just getting to a point where I won't be surprised we might see a lot of empty seats at Dignity Health Sports Park next season if this team does struggle mightily next year. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys to like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video? And if you're a Galaxy fan, what do you think are some of the strength and weakness of this team? And what is the three big question facing this team heading into this upcoming season? But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys to like, smash the subscribe button. And yeah, I, of course, will see you guys next time.